Really, really great to be together as family in this way. And Lisa, over the last number of weeks, you know that we've been just sharing in a slightly different way over the summer Sundays, called the summer sessions. We instead of just doing a full preach or a full teaching, we decided just to change it up a little bit for the summer weeks. And so we still have plenty of content because everything we speak is from the Word. That is our starting point. But also to just take real intentional views at faith in different areas. So we've spoken about faith for calling. Last week when we were in person, we spoke about faith for influence, and today together we're going to chat a little bit about faith for future.
Yes, exciting.
Yeah. Just if you're joining Doxa Deo Community Church for the first time, I want to just give you some context. We speak about being city changers, followers of Jesus. And what we really see and celebrate is that we're the base of God. We're the home base. This is if there was an explorational journey and we wanted to put a base down from which to work, our base is God. That is Him. That is Christ. And He, through His Holy Spirit, lives it in us, almost as if this is the place where His base is. And so wherever we go in our day-to-day, He's with us. He's there. He's there by virtue of us being there. And so we love that. It's a great thing because it means that Sundays at 10 o'clock are not, like, that's not church. This is gathering together to celebrate life. But God is here with us in every moment. And in 2022, as a church, we've really sensed that God is speaking to us about faith and being expectant of Him, expectant for Him. And I just want to introduce Lisa to you. Lisa is one of these really amazing, joy-filled people. I love the person that you are. You're an amazing person. And I have the privilege to actually spend much of my week with Lisa. Lisa's on team, part of our campus team, and so I'm really thrilled that we get to chat a little bit and also just to draw out some of the truths, wisdom and experience that you have as you are passionate for future. So Lisa, can you perhaps in 3 sentences, maybe 4 to stretch, can you just give us a little bit of a picture of who are you? Who is Lisa?
Wow. So Matt, I'm a woman. I'm a mum. I'm a wife of a lovely husband, and I think if I think about who I am, I think I'm filled with passion for life. Yeah. I love doing life. I love doing life with people, and I love relationship, and I love impacting. I think I really have a desire to make a difference.
So Lisa is, she carries the title on our team of Next Gen Leader.
Yeah.
So we're going to draw from some of that in and through this conversation. But if I can just perhaps take you back, let's go straight away to your earliest memory of Jesus, the person of Jesus.
So as a family, I grew up in a Christian church, a Christian home, and we were always at church. I don't think there was a Sunday we probably weren't at church, and we used to have these yearly conferences. And I remember I was probably about 7. I was thinking last night, probably 1990. Was attending this conference with a family, and it was huge kids work happening there. And I remember them asking who wanted to accept Jesus that day, and there were 3 of us actually in this whole hall, so many children, and the 3 of us that stood up. And I still remember that so well, and kind of the excitement walking out, being able to say, wow, I've just accepted Jesus. Wow. And through my life, there's been many other moments, but that was, 1990 at this. And
you can remember, 7 years old, you can remember that feeling. What was that?
Yeah, it was just excitement. I think a bit of the unknown, like, what's happening here? Why am I the only one of 3 standing? Why are the others sitting? But really, you know, looking back on that, realizing that that was my moment, and in that moment, kind of God grabbed hold of me, and He's still holding me today.
Wow. I absolutely love the way that Lisa's just pictured that painted that picture for us. And I wanted to ask about earliest memory of church, but you've just unpacked that a little bit, because it was so part of life. I remember growing up, church, I don't know why, and I've tried to think about why, but I never knew institutionalized church, and I never knew religious Jesus. I knew family, and I knew relationship. And I think it does come down to what you learn and what you hear from those who are raising you. But I think perhaps it was also my environment as well. We live in a small rural area, so it's really great to hear from you how this was a real thing. This was a real experience. This wasn't just coming and going. And a few weeks ago, Lisa joined at the Tea with the King on the Wednesday afternoon. And I grilled you a little bit.
Yes, you did.
In the sense of, I asked questions of Lisa, just so that we could, all in the room here. And one of the things that stood out to me was how many people met Jesus at a young age. It's quite a significant thing.
Yeah, it is significant. And I think it's one of those, you know, like I said, it almost felt like God grabbed me there. And I think that's why kids ministry, Next Gen, is so important.
Yeah. So I want to invite you today, we want to invite you, if you've got a question, post it into the chat. We will do our best to get around to it. We might not, but if we can get to it before the end of the time, it'll be great to look at those questions and get back and see what we can draw out of there. Lisa, you mentioned Next Gen. So Next Gen, what is Next Gen?
What is Next Gen? Well, it's the generation that comes after us, Matt.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so it's a generational thing. And so what excites you personally about the next generation?
I think the fact that they're still so, you know, it's like having a ball of clay in your hands and the ability to still mold them, and they're still so open, I think, which also becomes a challenge. But for me as a Next Gen leader, I think being able to be part of that molding, you know, system, or that's what's taking place in building the next generation is really exciting. I think they're confronted with so many things that you and I haven't been confronted with. But I think that excites me, because that means we have to think differently. And I love a bit of a challenge.
I know. And you're also really good at opening everybody else up around you to considering the challenge as well, which is really, I think it's a gift.
Yeah.
It's a gift. I was chatting with a friend just this week, and we were thinking back to school years, because he was my best friend in school. And we realised just how big a difference it is for children and young people today to then. And I'm not to say that this generation has it harder, but it's a different challenge. Yeah. And I think maybe if I can ask you to unpack that a little bit. What do we who've not experienced what some of these generations, what this generation is currently experiencing, what do we need to do perhaps to open up, to work with, to face the challenges?
I think this week actually I had a really interesting conversation with a young person, and I think I sat in the conversation realizing that I wasn't really fully understanding what they were talking about, because I didn't know. I hadn't been confronted with their challenge, and realizing that we as a generation have to inform ourselves. We have to go and see and hear and learn about what they're seeing, what they're doing, what they're being confronted with, in order for us to fully understand how we can come alongside them and help form, you know, the Christ in them that's, you know, that we want them to live from. Not forming Christ, but I mean exposing, making them aware of the Christ in them that they can draw from.
And so drawing from Christ at the centre of everything is a crucial part of that. Yeah. You've been on our staff team since the beginning of the year, so it's just over 7 months. This is the 8th month. It's been wonderful. It's been awesome. and we've been able to enjoy lots together, actually as a church family. And I get to see the passion that you spoke about earlier every day. So that's a real privilege, for me. But what has filled your heart? You spoke about these opportunities to chat with the youngsters and to mould them. What has filled your heart, brought you lots of joy over these last number of months?
I think there's two things. Firstly, being part of the team. I think I have a privilege of being in a team, part of something really big, with some of my best friends, which has been really exciting, because we all love doing things well, and I love doing things well. And then I think secondly, in my area of ministry, being able to kind of see us getting a rhythm in the ministry, seeing, children starting to pray, teens starting to ask, difficult questions, my own son accepting Jesus, during this year's fusion. I think there's been many moments, big ones, small ones. But yeah, I think it feels like the clocks are turning and we're starting to see a good rhythm.
No, it's really, really precious. Oftentimes, especially when we're in person, you leave the room halfway through and all the children head into their sessions, so we don't get to see all of this which happens. And in the same way, at these times, Leeds has often been ministering with the children online when we've been online. So they've had their own ministry time there. But looking forward to September, we're going to be in person once again. Just how crucial is being together as church for you?
It's very crucial. I think when I started on staff, everything was online, and I really felt a sense to try and get the teens specifically together. So I had them at my house every Sunday, just from 11 till just after 12:30, and the value has just been immense. The relationships they've formed, the like I've said, the space for them to be vulnerable has been so precious. And I think that's why being in person is so crucial. We need one another. We need to be together.
Yeah, so I know your excitement for the autumn term that's ahead. So families, make sure you're there. Yeah. I wanna take you back to a conversation we had earlier on, actually with the church earlier on in the year, just after you went along, joined the staff team, and we hosted a vision evening together online over Zoom, and it was really wanting to give context to what was happening all across the city, because we'd spent so much time online as church that it kind of felt at the time like we weren't really sure what was happening where, and so we were able to show all the different places where people, the church, are impacting. It was an amazing evening. But on that evening, you shared a proverb. I think it's an African proverb. Can you remind everybody what that proverb was?
Yes, it was. It takes a village to raise a child.
Okay. And so, I'm glad you remember. So how do you see that village picture?
I think I'm trying to keep my humour out of this.
No, be humorous. Have fun. No,
but I think when I think of village, I think of church, campus, taking hands with families and saying, how do we do this together? You don't have to be your own little island, and we don't just have to be a Sunday expression of, who God is. Let's take hands, families, church, and let's raise them together. If I'm part of the family, I know that there are people out there around me who's looking out for my three. I don't have to look out for them by myself. And for us as families, same towards other families in our family. Taking responsibility for raising the next generation.
And do you feel that?
I do. I think with some of the families in our church, I do, and I desire more of that. I desire people to come alongside and take hands. You know, that our hands are open. We're here. Let's do this together. We don't have to do life. We don't have to raise children alone. And we're excited about yours coming.
Yes, we are excited for ours as well. Yes, very, very exciting. You threw that one in and you've thrown me off.
Yeah, sorry.
But this is the fun and joy of getting to spend so much time with Lisa. Sometimes you never know what's coming around the corner, which is really, really great. No, we are very excited, and for Stacey and I, Stacey's expecting in January, and we're excited to see that little one become part of this church family too. And we know that we need one another.
Yeah.
It's a priority of ours as individuals, as a couple, in any case. But just to hear you say that, and also to recognize how you're seeing that in your own family, other people being part of the raising of your three, is really, really, really encouraging to hear. And I want to encourage you to not miss this principle.
Yeah.
It's a principle, and perhaps the first place to start is to pray. To be prayerful for those in the next gen, in and among us, and also to celebrate them. We're always actively looking for ways to celebrate their lives in the things that we do as church. I can think of many people who've played a part in my life that I'm super thankful for. Can you think back to someone in particular who has really been an influence to you? You don't have to name them, but can you remember a time where someone really helped play a part in moulding of you on that journey?
Yeah, I can think of a couple actually, especially, you know, school teachers. Thinking back on my kids' ministry days, those leaders who really invested in me. I think as a young person definitely. There's one that stands out quite clearly for me. And it was just incredible to see how God used her even in the very small details of my life. And that, I think that just really almost showed Jesus to me so clearly, so, tangibly, in ways that I probably never would have understood him. So yeah, I think I love experiencing God, and when God shows up in a very tangible way through people, like you've said, because, you know, God lives in us. It just blows my mind.
And I don't know if you heard that. You referenced people in places and capacities outside of the church walls.
Yeah.
And we can so often, just because of the routine of life and the rhythm of life, forget that in every moment, wherever we are, God is at work.
Yeah.
And it's about seeing those opportunities for us to give away.
Yeah.
Give him away, isn't it? It's giving him away in that.
Yes.
So 2 weeks ago, I spoke with Janine about calling. You can catch up on this online. And I just wanted to ask you, because when I spoke to Janine about calling, we really spoke about being called a daughter, a son of God. That is what calling is. It's to be surnamed to him. And so wherever we go, we know we are called in those spaces. You've known that there's been something of a call on you as a daughter of God to Next Gen. But a few years ago, God took you on a little bit of a different journey.
Yes, he did.
And so, just give us a little bit of a picture of that.
So probably about 3-4 years ago, I decided to retrain as a counsellor. And it's probably something I never would have imagined doing. But having married Yaku, and we had 3 children, and life was happening and it was good, but we found ourselves as a family in a really, really difficult situation with our children. And And it was quite a traumatic event as family. And as I've been thinking about it, it was probably, it could have been the place where, you know, we as family could have been destroyed. You know, that's, you know, it was quite severe. And I found myself having some counseling. There was lots of stuff I had to work through. But in that process, God was working. And I've just been reminded that, you know, Matt, God can redeem any story. Like, seriously, if that's all you hear today, God can redeem any story. And I was sitting in that chair talking about what had happened, and it was a Christian counselor, actually. It was probably God in her working in me and thinking, wow, you know, this is beautiful. If I could do this for people, for young people, you know, how incredible would that be? And I started, you know, digging around and found myself on the counselling course and graduated this year. But I just think it's amazing how, you know, in Romans 8 verse 28, God speaks about how he turns things, you know, for the good of those who love us. And I would have never wanted to experience what we did as a family. But God really took that and he is turning it into something really beautiful. And we as families still sometimes have to deal with consequences, and, you know, the village around us has to pull together and we have to stand and fight. But I feel like God's got something special for us as a family, because we have a story, and for me as a next gen leader, to be able to step out into the world and say, you know, come on guys, we can do this, you know, with God in us, we can do so much more. God can redeem any story.
Wow, you know, I know your sense of the sense of conviction you have for this particular area, but to actually walk a journey in a direction that you perhaps hadn't anticipated, and retrain, adding more strings to your bow, as people would say. It's quite a big deal, and it's quite a big commitment. I mean, it was a few years.
Yeah.
How did you know that God was behind that? And the reason I ask is because, especially for a young person, it could be someone later in life even. But for anyone today who maybe is wondering, I think perhaps God is speaking to me about this, that they might be able to take some courage from your experience there. How did you know that God was behind that?
I think I just, again, because I had experienced God so tangibly, and I knew that, you know, yeah, it was messy. This was really messy. But the conviction of knowing that God is going to redeem this for us, and we can use that to impact, to make a difference. And I think that being able to really sit and have somebody walk alongside me in something that was really difficult, I knew that God had called me to do the same for others. And especially young people. I don't know why young people necessarily, but I really feel God's calling for me as, you know, to work with young people.
Oh, it's so precious. It's so precious to hear this. Isn't this, can I encourage you to get into the chat? Isn't this so encouraging to hear passion for the future? I want to recognize that. I want to honor it. I want to celebrate that in you, Lisa. And may we celebrate that more and more and more as church. Not just in you, but birthed in others today who are listening to this. Lisa, 14 years ago.
Yes.
You and Jaco, your husband, moved to the UK. You
Yeah.
moved from one continent to this continent. You came to live in London, and you mentioned earlier you now since had 3 children. So this is really home. How important was it, as you think back, to that plugging in to community and into church family? I mean, we hear that the value of that from your earlier years and your upbringing, but you could have chosen not to.
Yeah, you're actually reminding me of how far we drove. So we came to the UK. Obviously, Yanni and Shrey are family, so we knew we would plug in there, not because of them, but it was easy for us just to find church. But we used to, so they used to be in Rains Park. We lived in Heathrow, well, close to Heathrow. And you've just reminded me, every Sunday morning we got up, drove to Rains Park and drove back. And thinking back on that, it's because I think we knew we had to connect somewhere. We were alone. We arrived at Heathrow with 3 suitcases. We had absolutely nothing. We had God, and we knew where to find Him in people, in church. And I think only when we moved closer to Sutton, we realised how far we were driving back and forth. But I guess that just shows how much we valued being together on a Sunday. During the week, we felt very alone because we were far away, but on Sundays we knew we would meet with people like us who loved God, who loved doing life. It was really important for us. I can't actually imagine us not having that. Yeah.
I'm reminded of a time when I was in school, and so a friend turned to me and said, "You only go to church because your parents go to church." And it bothered me. And later that afternoon, I was sat on the bus on the way home. And I think it was God who reminded me, no, you decided. You've chosen to follow. And I felt this like, tomorrow I'm going to show him. I'm going to tell him no. And I did. And that's what we're hearing from you. This isn't a cultural lifestyle. This isn't just going, hey, I'm in this thing. I'm going to keep going in it because I know it. Church is valuable.
Yeah.
Church means, well, we're hearing what church means to you because God is in it, and the experience of Him in every situation, I think, is beautiful to draw from and beautiful to hear together today. And there's a lot of pressures on young people in this day and age. We alluded to that a little earlier, and alluded to the fact that every generation has its challenges. But to families and to the church family, speaking about the village that raises the child, how do we play our part in impacting the generations?
I think everything we've said this morning, I think we can start by taking hands. You know, if we're holding hands, we're stronger. And thinking about your comment about, you know, we only go to church because, you know, our parents go to church. I've heard that from teenagers. But being able to challenge thinking like that, and thinking about my experience when I was 7 years old, and we were 3 who stood up in a hall of hundreds, and teaching and showing our children, our next gen, that's okay. It's okay to be part of the 3. You don't have to sit with a 400. We have to draw from Christ in us and live from the Spirit, because, you know, that's where our victory lies. But if I say, you know, if I think of my own children, if I say to Nathan, you know, don't do this, it's not good, you know, he might go and test it. But if you go and say, oh, Nathan, if Janine goes and says, Nathan, you know, they're hearing it from multiple people, and it becomes a bit more of a reality. And I want people around me to challenge my children, because we're raising them together. I don't want to stand alone.
No, and I think what is a joy for me today is that this is not something I feel not a part of. I actually, as I think of our little one, I know that you're going to do that. I know that you're going to bring that challenge, and the encouragement for me is that you live with the Word at the centre. Yeah. I mean, it's not just, hey, this is a good thing to do or not do. It's the Word shows us this, therefore. Yeah. I just want to see what questions we might have here in the chat. It's great to see comments coming through. Barbara asks, let me just see. Barbara asks, if we want to create authentic family, can we adopt people around us to become our family? From younger families adopting elderly people to elderly people being grandparent roles.
Oh, I'd love that.
Yeah.
I'd love that.
Yeah.
I love that, Barbara.
Yeah. So, what if you could summarize this, Lisa? Would you say is the understanding of God's call on the church in looking to future?
Just repeat that, sorry, man.
If you summarize your understanding of God's call to us for the future, how would you actually summarize it? How would you phrase it?
How would I phrase it? I think probably with my proverb.
Oh.
It takes a village to raise a child. And I think, looking back on what Barbara said, you know, my children don't have grandparents anymore. They have a grandfather who lives in South Africa, and I would love for us to interlink generationally because there's so much wisdom, you know, and we as young families don't always have the answers, and we need to pray for them, Matt. We need to look out for each other, just as I and Yoko look out for our three. I think if we as a church could grow and understand the power behind family. You know, city changes, that movement will explode because we have so much to give.
That's an awesome place to just wrap this up with, Lisa. And I want to just share just a few final thoughts on this whole notion of generation. So, first of all, God is the God of the future. Okay, when we look at Genesis, you can go and see it in Genesis chapter 1, Genesis chapter 9, when he speaks to Noah, Genesis 17, when he speaks to Abraham, he says, I establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be God to you and to your descendants after you. So God is the God of future. There's lots that is drawing our attention at the moment that's happening around us in our communities, socially, globally, and sometimes you can get caught up with all of this and forget that actually, hang on a second, God is God of the future. And so God is the God of the future. But three things just to say quickly. God is there already. It's not like we're going to enter into something and he hasn't got a clue. God is there already. Sometimes makes some of the experiences we have challenging. Sometimes it makes them even more beautiful. Isaiah 48, God speaks to Isaiah and says, now I will tell you of new things to come, events that I did not reveal before. He's there already. He knows already. But secondly, this is his idea. All right, so God is there already, but this is his idea. So if you read that little passage around it, it says that all I foretold has now taken place. You have to admit my predictions were right. Now I will tell you of new things to come, events that I did not reveal before. Only now I am making them happen. Nothing like this took place in the past. That's what he said to Israel, looking ahead to Jesus. Now we're looking back at that. So the encouragement for us today is that he's there already. And it was all his idea. But here's the last point I want us to just draw from this. Is it's crucial, and that's what we heard from you today, Lisa. It's crucial for Jesus' followers. It's crucial for us city changers to take hands with him in this. And by taking hands with him, we take hands with one another too. A few portions of scripture just to draw into this. Jesus said to his disciples, let the children come to me. Do not stop them, because the kingdom of God belongs to such as these. You should never hold the view that, you know, what God wants to do for me is of a higher standing than for the younger lot, because we understand more, we're more mature. We must never think like that. When Joel the prophet calls out to the people of Israel, he says, tell your children about God, tell your children about it, let your children tell their children, and their children to the next generation. God is a God of the generations, and to take hands with him is this active role of participating together. And I just want to read this as a prayer, perhaps, just to draw this time to a close. Ephesians chapter 3, 20 and 21 in the Amplified Version. I just want to pray over you. If you've been stirred by this, or maybe something's caught a hold of you today, I just want to pray God's favor and blessing on you. May you really know his voice. May you know him speak. May you be encouraged by Litsa's life, by everything that's happened in this conversation, and trust him, carrying this faith for future. It's not our faith, we carry his faith for future. And Ephesians chapter 3:20. Let's just do this as a prayer together. Now to him who is able to carry out his purpose and do super abundantly more than all that we dare ask or think, infinitely beyond our greatest prayers, hopes, or dreams, according to his power that is at work within us. To him be the glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen. We are going to take a moment to reflect. If you're on your own, you can carry on in prayer. If you're together with others, have a conversation on these questions. But we're going to post 2 questions up onto the screen in just a moment's time. And I'd just love to invite you to carry on in this sense of hearing the voice of God and responding to him today. To catch up on all the things coming up, things that we mentioned at the beginning of the celebration, please head to the website. You'll find all the information there. But we just want to celebrate this time. Lisa, thank you so much for giving your time today. You're going to have a few weeks of break now, of holiday. May it be refreshing. May it be full of fun. May you as family have a really great time.
Thank you.
And look forward to connecting with everybody in the week ahead. God bless you, and we will see one another next Sunday in person for the Bring and Share brunch. See you there.
Thank you.